Phase 2 Advantage Cybersecurity is an operational training consulting company based in Savannah, Georgia. We have an operational mission where we do actual cybersecurity missions, both domestically and abroad. We have a training arm that develops certifications for higher education and for governmental agencies. And then, excuse me, we have an educational mission. We work with academia to do curriculum development for a lot of the emerging cybersecurity programs that are coming online, since everybody is being required to stand up capability on very short notice. So we're fortunate to be involved in all three of those areas, which has given us a very unique perspective. As far as me, 30 seconds and less. I started in the United States military, Army. I was always a geek. I transferred into the federal government, and I went from government service, came out of the closet as a full geek and into cyber. And here I sit today as the Director of Operations for our company. I also serve as the chairman of the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee for Savannah Technical College, once again, staying entrenched with higher education. And for full disclosure, excuse me, I'm also a strategic partner with Circadence, who is a sponsor of this event. But I'm not here to speak today as a person selling product, not even a little bit. I've had a great time in the community chat rooms, and I've been watching and listening. And I'm seeing the struggles. I'm seeing, where do we start? What do we do? What is it that is actually going to work? How do we put these programs together? How do we make them effective? How do we turn out great graduates that are going to be highly productive? And it's been really engaging and wonderful to watch so many educators who are so passionate about this and wanting to do such a good job to spin this up and turn out an effective workforce. That being said, I wanted to share, well, I guess that's enough. That's enough about me and the company. I wanted to share from an employer's perspective, based on some of the questions and comments and interaction I've seen in the community, some really good news and some really bad news. And for that, I'm going to have to share my screen. So allow me to share. And we are going to start with a resource that I believe every educator should have their hands on. This is the CyberSeek Supply and Demand Heat Map. This is a real-time measuring of the supply and demand gap for cybersecurity. It's fed by federal agencies, by job boards, by university systems. It's fed by a number of different sources, and it's updated regularly. One of the things I wanted to point out, as educators being a Virginia conference, is what's happening in Virginia, if you can see that. Right now, there are currently 54,432 job openings. These are not projected. These are very real. These are very open. And these are positions that have not been filled or cannot be filled because of a lack of qualified candidates coming out the door. It's also because they're expanding at a much greater rate than academia or anybody else could ever keep up with. In fact, it's predicted by 2025, the global shortage of cyber talent is going to be close to 6 million people. We have a long road ahead of us to try to generate the talent to be able to fill these talent gaps. This can be drilled down to municipality, to city, to specialty areas, to the various positions that are needed in these areas. And when you're talking about curriculum development and what direction you should go in as far as standing up programs, I believe this is a very useful tool. We use it all the time, and it's cyberseek.org heat map. I can make all these links available later as we go. So the good news, excuse me, as of June of this year, it was officially declared that there was 0% unemployment in the IT field. That's wonderful. We haven't seen that before. On the bad side, we have an extreme shortage, and in this case, in Virginia, we have 54,000. One of the questions that I repeatedly see in these community forums is, how do we take these students and prepare them for a cyber workforce. And this is the reason I'm here today. I'm not here as a vendor. I have nothing to sell. I am an educator, but I'm not here as an educator. I'm here as a private sector cybersecurity company director who wants to hire your students when they graduate. I really do. And all of us want to hire them because we are experiencing the shortage firsthand, and it's really, really painful. So the nature of the discussion today was workforce development, how to prioritize the curriculum development to meet the workforce development, and to provide some useful resources for educators that I think, in parallel with working with the private sector, will be very useful in helping you develop these programs. I heard it referenced in an earlier session today. Somebody mentioned the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework. We are strong advocates of this. The NICE cybersecurity workforce framework is an incredible tool for curriculum development for anybody who is not aware of it quite yet. There is a misconception. This sits on a government website. So it's assumed because it's NIST and Department of Homeland Security that this is actually a government initiative. It is not. When it was first beginning to be created in 1994, it was done in a parallel execution between the corporate sector, academia, and the government. The entire purpose of the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework was to create a common lexicon, a common body of knowledge, so those three particular verticals could interact, speak the same language, know the same needs, and plan for this workforce development for the next 20 years. So to think of it as a government down framework is not entirely accurate. Now, this framework, once again, anybody who is involved in cybersecurity and the teaching of cybersecurity, especially if you're in curriculum development, you're going to find this to be extraordinarily useful. High-level view, 7 categories, 33 specialty roles, 52 work roles, supported by 2,081 KSAs, knowledge, skills, ability, and tasks. That is actually where the curriculum development happens. And the reason I'm showing you this is, one, it should be an integral part of everything you do for curriculum development, because it's an integral part of our hiring process. And once again, it was created by corporate, academia, and the government in tandem in a parallel execution, so we could all collaborate and speak the same language. I saw a comment just recently in one of the chat rooms, one of the community rooms, and somebody who's very passionate about wanting to stand up programs asked the question, where do we start? How do we start? How do we get a grip on this? There were questions about certifications versus education, and we can talk about that, though those are important as well. But to speak to that issue of where you start, I wanted to point out a little known fact about this framework, and I have to jump to another screen. In the 52 job roles, the first 6 knowledge points that are deemed to be critical are common to all 52 work roles. I have them highlighted here. I'm sorry, excuse me. If you go into the framework, it starts off with abilities, the work role, it goes into abilities, it goes into the knowledge, it goes into the skills and the tasks. But the important thing to notice here, as you develop your various curricula, is that these 6 knowledge points have been agreed upon as the 6 most critical bodies of knowledge that anybody can have walking into the cyber industry. And they are common to every single work role that exists. If you want a place to start, if you want a place to start building that body of knowledge, these are the 6 critical knowledge points. It doesn't matter if you're going into forensics, risk management, enterprise architect, whatever aspect of cyber you're going into, these 6 remain constant, and they should be at the core of any program, any course that is actually taught. Once again, people don't use the NICE framework very much. They think it's a government thing. It's not, and then they don't dissect it. But all these knowledge, skills, and abilities are what the entire community has determined these people need to know for these different work roles. And this basically turns into a KMS sheet for the building of a syllabus for a class. And it makes building these classes very, very easy. And it does it in a language that everybody understands. So I did definitely want to point that out. While references to the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework have been pointed out, have been referenced in passing, I cannot begin to tell you the importance of this framework and where it came from and building up these curricula. I also want to share with you a dirty little secret that most corporations will not talk about in public. And I'm glad nobody's listening, because I would hate to utter this in public and have it be attributed to me. Not many years ago, we had a much different type of corporate employee relationship. Corporations were loyal to their employees. A lot of us still try to be. And employees were loyal to corporations. That has shifted in the last decade, and nowhere is that more important than in the cybersecurity realm. And I will blame cybersecurity for this. We have shifted back in the day from when you would have an engineer working for IBM for 32 years, 35 years, 40 years. He would know everything, she would know everything. They were an incredible body of knowledge. We have now shifted over to a contracting system. It's contract with a W-2 conversion opportunity. It's virtually every cyber job that's out there. And this has not only made your jobs as educators infinitely more difficult, it's created a really, I believe, damaging dynamic in the space. The contracts tend to be short. There is almost never any type of relocation. The acclimation period is extraordinarily short, and there is no train-up opportunity. When a person is contracted, the bright side, the money is phenomenal. $140, $150, $200 an hour, 40-hour work weeks. And then if the company likes the employee, they could do the W-2 conversion, drop their salaries and give them the benefits. The downside is the people that are being turned out of educational institutions now have to be able to hit the ground running. There is no train-up opportunity. They are expected to have hands-on and knowledge the moment they walk through the door. There's your seat, there's your desk, there are the tools, use them. That has made life very, very challenging for those of us who interface with the educational system. Not only now do we have to come up with programs and degrees and curricula that are viable, we have to ensure they have the quote-unquote experience in the hands-on, because they're going to be expected to perform the moment they walk out the door. In many cases, internships do not provide that level. So it comes back to us that are operating in the school systems. But once again, I'm not speaking as an educator here, I'm speaking as an employer. So we have an incredible shortage of people in cyber. We desperately need more people in cyber. And unfortunately now we have a dynamic where they need to be ready to go the moment they walk out the door. I've seen conversations on certifications versus education. I do not believe the two are mutually exclusive. I have often said, being involved in the hiring process, certifications will get you through the door. They'll get you an interview. While certifications may get you a job, education will most certainly get you a career. They cannot be considered independently. They are not mutually exclusive. And the important thing is not the certification. The important thing is what's happening in that certification, and are these people ready to perform the moment they walk out the door? All certifications are not created equal. Obviously, we want labs, we want cyber ranges, we want as much hands-on as we can possibly get. And therein lies a little bit of an issue. As we all know, there is not an infinite amount of resources. Nobody has an infinite amount of resources. So we're forced to pick and choose. We have cyber ranges like Virginia Cyber Range, Circadence, who we're partnered with. that do an incredible job of providing incredibly advanced products that give people the type of training that they need. But that is still not good enough. I wanted to point out to a number of people, once again, I'm not here to sell anything, that there are a number of resources out there that do not rise to the level of a cyber range, but they are still free, can be used in the classroom. Kali Linux, for example, ships with hundreds of tools that are used every day in the cyber industry. There are dozens of textbooks written that support every single one of those tools. Wireshark, for example, something that we teach in our training. It's free. It's free. There's no limit to what you can do with these tools, and there's no limit to the amount of training. And for the most part, a lot of these resources come with labs. So students on their own, self-directed, or whether it's instructor-led in classrooms, if, for example, they're using a cyber range for their more advanced students, but they don't have the budget on the lower end, there are so many resources out there that will give these students this incredible experience. And by the way, as an employer, when I say somebody needs to have X amount of experience, I am not necessarily referring to chronological experience. If that person can sit down and demonstrate that they possess working knowledge of this body of knowledge, of these tools, that's the experience that we expect to see coming out of people. I hate it when I see 10 years experience required for technology that's only been on the shelf for 3 years. It's important that they have them in their hands. So there are resources out there. They are available. They are free, in addition to all the paid solutions, which are incredibly advanced, like I mentioned before. So as an employer, I'm asking that the educational community in this workforce development initiative, that we have a lot more collaboration. Down here, for example, I can only speak for the Technical College System of Georgia and for Savannah Technical College. We conduct our classes there. We have a great working relationship with their economic development, their vice president there, and their academic side for that matter. They have created a mandate for committees that involve outside companies to be able to sit and review curriculum, to look over these different classes, the KMS sheets, the accreditation requirements, to determine what is real, what is not. We interact on a regular basis. Productively, we try to be a productive part of the process. A lot of times these same outside organizations will come in and be guest lecturers when it's appropriate. They'll spend a day answering student questions. They're invested in the process because, like us, we want to be able to hire your graduates when they leave. So I didn't see a lot of chat about this in the community forums, but I would argue that one of the best places to start is not with the tools, not with the labs, but in getting out to your local community, getting involved with your economic development councils, getting involved with the economic development side of the technical schools, and interfacing with the industries in the community, and simply sitting us down and asking us, what do you need? What is it going to take for you to hire 100 of our graduates in 2022? And we will, quite honestly, give you a list, and it's not going to be extreme and it's not going to be unobtainable. But not interfacing with the very people, and I know it's done to some degree, but I think there has to be much more stress put on this. Interfacing with the local industries that are going to be the buyers of your talent, which are going to be your graduates from your cybersecurity programs, especially if they're willing to give you the real world dirty secrets and tell you what the expectation is. So once again, as an employer, I've been watching, I've been incredibly impressed as to what I've seen, and the passion from the educators and what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. But really, from a workforce development perspective, I would argue that there needs to be much more engagement with the local, cut deep, then go wide, not national, with the local agencies and organizations that are going to hire the talent and they will point you in the right direction. They will take the time because they do have the vested interest. Nothing is more important than the education of these students. And education leads to every other profession on the planet. So as far as a workforce development perspective, and what we're seeing and the shortages and the resources that we know are out there and the difficulties that are being experienced at the college and university level, we empathize, we want to be involved, we want to be a productive part of the process, and we want to employ your people. So we're here, we want to help. And anything that we can do to help within reason, we will. And we just need to be asked or allowed in some cases, but we need to have the access and the access to the collaboration, because we really do want to see these programs in academia be successful and hire as many of your graduates as we can. So really focusing on the NICE framework, focusing on the supply and demand heat map, to know where the need is, focusing on NICE framework to know how to develop the curriculum, and see what's been agreed upon, knowing it's not a government mandate. It was created equally by government, private sector, and academia for the very thing that people are trying to figure out in these community chat rooms. It exists, it's here. It takes a little while to learn, takes a little while to interpret, but it is probably one of the most valuable resources you will ever have as you build your programs. And that being said, no death by PowerPoint. I really just wanted to point that out and bring you an employer's perspective of what we look for and some of the resources that we use. And we certainly hope that we and others like us can partner with the academic community to turn out the best graduates that every one of these institutions can turn out. And that's really the speaking portion of everything I have to say. And I'm hoping that there are questions.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. I can barely, but yes, I can hear you. Who am I speaking with, Tyrone?
This is Tyrone.
Okay, Tyrone, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. One of the questions I have, particularly from my journey, but it involves, students. I made a career change. I was not IT in the military, but I went to a bachelor's degree, but not IT related. Went to Northern Virginia Community College. Turned associates in IT and cyber, and then took me a couple of years, but then I got my security plus. So without the experience, it was a journey getting that first entry level job in cybersecurity. What I found though, and I am employed now, and thankfully, but what I find now, and I know it's a challenge probably for many students that I still talk to that I work with, is that first entry level job, and one of their disappointments and something that kind of discourages them is the job descriptions. And it seems like sometimes there's a disconnect, say, from the HR people who might be writing the job description and the actual need that comes from the hiring manager. Because so many times I have seen it says entry level job or, not that much experience needed, but the job says, CISSP needed, and we know CISSP is not somebody who's an entry-level job, and that's just the extreme case. But I would think on the workforce side, there could be more scrutiny, not scrutiny, maybe it's not the right word, but the hiring manager to kind of look over these job descriptions. So when students are looking for jobs or those entering the workforce with very little experience or little to no experience, that the job descriptions will meet or be closer to what a company is looking for. Your thoughts?
That's an outstanding point. It gets complicated even further. Speaks to what you're saying. It gets complicated even further when it gets passed over to a recruiting agency that now has to take that miscommunication and miscommunicate it even further, which they do tend to do. I go back to the NICE framework. One of the biggest things about NICE, and they do need to do a better job of this, But this is where education and private sector have to work together. It was to create a common lexicon, okay? Everybody's speaking the same language. So when the private sector has a need, I have a need, for example, I need a vulnerability assessment specialist, I need a pen tester, I need somebody who has XYZ proficiency in incident response or disaster response. This particular framework allows me to look at what I need, identify the tasks and the skills that are required, because those are defined work roles, for example. Then hand that over to an HR manager who then also has the verbiage that they need. They communicate more effectively and more efficiently. In a parallel execution, academia, looking at BLS, looking at jobs outlooks, looking at trends, uses that same lexicon, the same vocabulary to create and name their courses and identify the content that's going to be in. So in reality, when used effectively and efficiently, the schools are creating courses with descriptions that a hiring manager can look at that align with the job that they need, which aligns with the announcement that HR put out, which is then carried forward by the recruiting organization that is contracted by this company to go out and seek out the talent. That was one of the primary reasons this was created. So yes, they have to do a much better job of doing that. It is frustrating. It's also frustrating to know that sometimes, especially if you're changing positions, sometimes you just have to start from scratch. But if you're good and you're driven and motivated and willing to learn and have a love of learning, it can be done. But that is another reason to become a champion of this framework. By the way, you referenced, thank you for your service, by the way, sir. You referenced coming from a discipline other than IT. Cybersecurity, in my opinion, is 20% technology, 80% behavior. It is not the traditional computer science. Then it went to IT, which is people, processes, and systems and technology. Now cyber. Cyber is, I would argue, 80% behavioral based. And to be perfectly honest, I do not see that as a barrier to entry, especially if one is coming from a more broad-based liberal arts education where they've been taught to think. Let's not forget that the founder of LinkedIn, who is now a billionaire after the sale, had a PhD in philosophy. And we use LinkedIn every day. We think of it as technology and social media. So with the right mindset and the right desire to learn and given the right tools, I do not see somebody transitioning from one background to another. There are definitely transferable skills, and contingent upon the desire of the individual, I do not see that as a barrier or an impediment. But good on you for being able to pull off what you did, Tyrone.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate that insight.
My pleasure.
All right, I don't hear anyone else chiming in, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna, if you can hear me, I'll chime in with a question as well. This is Julie Back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Julie.
Okay, great. So I'm actually here kind of as a bit of an outsider. I am new to a position with the NASA Virginia Space Grant Consortium, and I'm in Virginia, and of course we offer a lot of programs that partner with NASA, and we get a lot of students who aspire to be engineers of all different types, and also researchers, of course. But we're looking at how can we better support this need in cybersecurity, because of course the ultimate goal of all of our programs is to ensure we're matching up students to opportunities. And so I've been here at the conference and really getting a lot out of it, in part because cybersecurity in itself is not new to me. My husband actually works in cybersecurity. And so I'm very familiar with just the very broad needs. But I've been working as part of the K-12, the NICE K-12 subgroup committee, And I just started this in June. So again, it's all very new. So if I sound like I'm rambling, it's because I'm trying to pull it all together, and I'm very much a systems thinker. But I'm just wondering, given everything that you just shared, which has been some really kind of eye-opening information for me personally, do you see any particular role, or what kind of opportunities do you think may exist for an organization like this to support this kind of work? We're not exactly in the teaching of any particular curriculum, although we could design a program, but of course that would mean matching up with experts who actually are SMEs. Yeah, I guess let me start there. Where could we possibly find a place to support this work?
That's a great question. That's a great question. And as you know, as I'm sure you know, innovation happens at the cross section of disciplines.
Right.
So for the design thinking process to work, for innovation to work at those cross section of disciplines, not everybody's going to be the teacher, not everybody's going to be the aeronautical engineer, everybody's going to have something unique to bring to the table. And it's important that everybody realize that. I'm not a teacher, what can I do with education? I'm not an aeronautical engineer, what can I do with NASA? As we know, it takes a lot of people to make this happen. The first thing I think would be to identify your hiring trends, your projected hiring trends, and your talent gaps, let's say over the next 3 to 5 years, and conveying them out accurately to those institutions that are going to be providing you with the talent. The second is perhaps offering the opportunity to have some people in your organization do nothing more than come in and engage and offer real world experience. It doesn't need to be a one-for-one corollary. Somebody can come in and talk about job skills. Somebody can talk about corporate culture as it relates to the technology environment. Because corporate culture in the technology environment might be radically different than a corporate culture in, let's say, a Salesforce office, right? The type of personalities tend to be different. There is so much to contribute to these students on so many different levels. Engaging the schools, finding out where the opportunities are to interface and collaborate. Once again, people are looking for one-to-one correlations, things that fit, that you can check a box. But do these students know how to survive a technology job interview? Do they know what your hiring process is? If you were to actually consider one of them, do they know what your hiring process is and what you look for when your organization sits down to hire talent? Having that type of inside knowledge, you're not teaching per se, you're educating, but having that type of inside knowledge coming from the industry would be a real eye-opener to these students. It would be an eye-opener to the faculty, and it might make them, it might give them that epiphany moment where they say, wait a second, perhaps we can shift focus and look at this and look at this and look at this. If it does nothing more than open doors to additional opportunities, it does not have to be a one-for-one. And, of course, not giving up proprietary information, what we do on our hiring process, if that is, secret squirrel and proprietary, because it requires clearances and such. But to the extent that it can be done, information just as simple as that. Here are hiring needs, here are hiring trends, here's our hiring process, here's what we look for. Here's the people who do well in a technology corporate culture. Is all that being reinforced in the classroom as soft skills around all the hard skills they're expected to receive when they walk out? Can you imagine how valuable that knowledge would be? And you do not have to be a technical expert to be able to do that. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And actually, you touched specifically on one of the things that I think has been, because I worked with one of our programs for 5 years before I was hired into this new position. And so even though, yes, as I mentioned, we work with a lot of people who want to be researchers, they want to be engineers, but the programs that we do ultimately are more about helping them develop those soft skills. I hate that word, but it's out there.
It's common.
It grates my nerves, but it's everybody knows what I mean when I say it. So, we really do work on that. And so, what you're saying absolutely resonates. And, I would expect that to be a need that we could potentially really help with. So I'm glad to hear that you would suggest that that's a good starting place as well. So thank you
Oh,
for
absolutely. Absolutely. And great. I mean, Julie, really, to be able to think of that and think ahead like that, once again, there seems to be these false partitions and barriers because we operate in different silos, different verticals, and the world's changing.
that.
Once
Right.
again, innovation happens at the cross section of disciplines, and it's going to require all of us, regardless of what our background is and what we do. So yes, I can think of 100 things off the top of my head, and you can find me on LinkedIn. You can get me through my contact information, and I'll be happy to be a whiteboard for you anytime you
Oh,
want to
fantastic.
exchange of ideas, and that extends to anybody else as well. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're not here to help be a part of the solution, then we're part of the problem.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
We have about 7 minutes, so if anyone else has any questions, now's the time to ask.
The only thing I'd say real quick before they ask questions, I put my contact information up on the screen. Once again, I didn't have a cool slide where I could actually put up all my information, but my contact information is in the conference profile. I will connect with anybody on LinkedIn. I will help support, and phase 2 will help support any mission that there is out there. And the important thing is that a dialogue has been started and people are interfacing and working together. So if we accomplish nothing more than that, we have accomplished a lot more than we have in the past. And that's all I've got. Except some great graduates. We have a bunch of positions we need to fill. Anything else going on, Victoria?
No, we have a break coming up. And if there are no further questions, we can go ahead and exit out the room. I do appreciate your time and your insight.
Oh, I saw something there. What advice would you give to high school students? I won't take a lot of time on that. Advice to high school students. When I was a high school student, I debated one of my professors one time. He led me out onto a branch. I thought I was doing well. He cut off the branch. I hit the ground. And he put the knife through my heart when he said, Kaplan, it's not your fault. You don't need to know this stuff. The government hides information like this from people like you in books. And from that moment forward, I became a prolific reader. The thing that high school students can do, go out, get your A+, get your CompTIA, get the certifications that are in reach. Find out if there are any opportunities with dual enrollment programs with local technical colleges like we do down here with Savannah Tech. If they're in junior, senior year, whatever it might be. If there are any local communities, any local groups that center around technology and cyber that are hosted either at these schools or privately or whatever they may be, and interface with the different groups and just be that tabula rasa, be that sponge, and prepare as best you can in a self-directed fashion with the resources that you realistically have around you by hand. You don't need to spend money to do that. Communities have groups, their announcements and papers. They love to have high school students. And Lord knows colleges love to have high school students come and participate in, their social events and their speaking events because they know they're the future of that particular college as well. So in my opinion, a good, motivated, self-directed high school student has virtually unlimited opportunities. But that has to be based on their own, you're quite welcome, that has to be based on their own initiative.
Any other questions?
once again, my information's out there. Anybody, I'm open. I'm an open book. I'm accessible. I'm not always available, but if anything does pop up after the fact, I'm not a hard target to hunt down.